Alright, folks. Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、おかえりなさい。今日は198日目です。It is day 198. We are good with grammar. Today is Friday again, so I'll have an abbreviated schedule. We're gonna hop right into our topics. Maybe complete our second lesson, like set of lessons. Alright, this and or that. Make lists of nouns in a variety of ways. Interesting. So they used to and ka. I suppose there are other lists. This is covering the basic ones. Like we have list of reasons. Among a list, like exhaustive and non-exhaustive. Get into this one. In this topic, we're going to learn a couple of ways to list and group things in Japanese. Also, we'll deepen our understanding of particles. We'll take a look at the to particle being used to mean something like and also the ka particle being used to mean something like or. In both cases, we're just presenting several different things that exist with the same level of importance in the overall sentence.
これは消しゴムと鉛筆です。
消しゴムと鉛筆です。鉛筆です。
青い靴か赤い靴。
Interesting with the comma placement. 青い靴か赤い靴. Right, self-explanatory. Too bad. Were there special notes about to? Okay. The last one in speech and conversation can often be omitted. Fair enough. Let's look at if there are any. Okay, so I guess ka. That's fair. Ka could be at the end. Fair enough. Fair enough. And it would be dependent on the rising tone, right? Whether it's saying or asking a question. Interesting. From these examples, we can see that in Japanese, ka is performing the same role as the question mark would, or that a change in tone in the spoken language. This nuance of ka can be used after the dictionary form of almost any word in Japanese, right? However, using des and mas will change the nuance from presenting possibility to a. Fair enough. Now that we know a couple ways to list, 2 ways to list things, let's take a deeper dive into the logic of listing in Japanese. How exhausting, yeah. So although to can be translated as and, its usage is strictly that stricter than the English and. It means an exhaustive list, so just those things. This means that everything marked by to makes up the entire list with no exceptions. So it's not among things, but the things. Right.
今週は明日と水曜日と木曜日が休みです。
Yeah, so this isn't like, for example, it wouldn't necessarily suggest Wednesdays and Thursdays, perhaps. And it's exhaustive, basically. These are the only possibilities in this week. To make it incomplete or open-ended list, we can use the particle ya. Okay, so they do include ya or toka. So those are the other two, both of which we will learn about in future topics because they are later down the road as well. It's interesting they kept it in here.
私は日本語や英語を話します。
Yeah, so this is a non-exhaustive list. So you're providing some examples among other possibilities.
僕はピーナッツとか甘いお菓子は食べません。
I don't recall the oh no yeah toka is or in a non-exhaustive or. Mixing and matching. Although to and ka can be both used to make sorts of lists, we aren't forced to choose one or the other and combine them to create more complex structure. All the nouns joined together by to become a single noun phrase. So they can be treated like one big noun. It is like creating a set. Then we can use ka to offer a choice between those sets. Yeah.
明日は消しゴムと鉛筆とパソコンかペンとノートとスマホが必要です。
Oh, okay. Yeah. Pento, noto, smaho ga hitsuyo desu. So they took two lists and compared them. It's or two lists, right? Or two of the lists of nouns. All right, never-ending homework. Interesting. Okay.
お父さん、今日は金曜日だ。映画を見る？トム、僕は映画を見ないよ。これは学校の宿題。お父さん、それは音楽の教科書と漢字のノートと英語の本？トム、そう、これは月曜日の宿題。土曜日と日曜日は野球の練習だ。お父さん、あれはレポート？トム、あれも。シチューかサラダかステーキを作る宿題。お父さんが明日シチューを作るよ。トム、ありがとうお父さん。僕は漢字の練習を始めます。
Okay. So, the father said today is Friday. Do you want to watch a movie? Right? And the son said that I can't watch a movie. With an emphasis, I can't watch a movie. There's homework to be done, right? There's homework. Or this is I guess he's pointing to this is school's homework. So like he's showing this is school's homework. Then the father said that that music textbook, right, and a kanji textbook and an English or book. So those are music, kanji, and English books, right? Or textbook. It's inferred that it's a textbook. So there's the textbook book. The textbook is the music textbook, and then there's the notebook for kanji, and then the English book for English, which I just heard as book. He specifically said ongaku no kyokasho to, right, kanji no noto to eigo no hon. So specifically textbook, notebook, and book, which is a great way for them to specifically be a little bit pedantic on throwing in different ways to express different types of books. And then soul acknowledgement, right? Right. These are Mondays, right? Mondays work. So Mondays assignments. And then Saturday and Sundays. Saturday and Sunday, yasai. Yasai. Oh, no, yaku. Sorry, yaku. Yaku. Yasai. Sorry, I thought he was talking about food already. Yaku, and no, there's baseball practice. Renshu da. There's baseball practice on Saturday and Sundays. And the father said, and also, right, and also, or over there is a report. So like, and that a report, right? So their report, he's pointing to this away from both of them, right? And his son said, oh yeah, and that too, right? And that too. This is where it was a little bit weird. So then it pivoted to the son saying stew or salad or steak. Like the assignment was to make soup, salad, or steak, right? Or the homework or the assignment is, which that was a bit of a pivot. I was like, wait a minute, now are they talking about dinner? Are they talking about the assignment? So then the father said, well, tomorrow we can I'll make steak, right? Or I'll make stew. Sorry, not steak. I'll make stew with an emphasis. I like how it says dad will make steak, but he's referring to himself in the third person. Or that's, we talked about that yesterday, where you can refer to yourself like that. Like the father said, father is going to make steak tomorrow, right? And then the kid says, thank you, father. I'm in terms of me, right, I'm going to start on the kanji assignment, or I'm gonna go practice kanji. Specifically, they said renshu. Thanks, Ion. All right, so this is pretty standard. So listing is good. They included ya, which is nice, and then toka versus to and ka. So to, ka are the exhaustive, and ya and toka are the non-exhaustive analogous ones. So to, ya, and then we have ka and toka. Now there are a few more, like shi, which is a list of reasons. And then there are comparisons, like a list of comparisons. So there are a couple N4s that's what they mean by future lessons as well. All right, let's go back. Let's look at this. What is our next one? Demonstratives. Point out and identify locations in the world. Yeah, so now we're going to demonstratives as opposed to the nounized ones, nominalized ones, like sore, kore, tore, you know. kore, sore, are. Now we have the koko, soko, and asoko for the demonstratives. So in this topic, we're going to learn about another set of kosoado words, right? Where kore, sore, are are used with objects. Koko, soko, and asoko are used with places. They roughly correspond to here, there, and over there. Pretty straightforward.
ここは病院ですね。
ですね。
そこはレストランだ。あそこはお寺ですよね。
I like how they integrated the different degrees of confirmation, right? Ne is a softened confirmation. Da is a casual statement, right? And then yone is a assertive confirmation, right? From our previous topic. And then we have a byoin, hospital, restaurant, and otera, right? Actually, there was a desk too. I think I often would use something more formal when you're talking about something like very important. Otera, the temple is quite important, so that's kind of an interesting point right there. Are there any nuances of koko? Koko should not be confused with kochi. Hey, yeah, similar word, which is also translated as here. Kochi focuses more on the direction that one goes, yeah, versus the stationary. So kochi, like, come towards this direction. What about, is this with sochi? Yeah, so we have all the cautions would be then the kosoado of the direction. So kochi, sochi, and achi, right? Those are, and then there are others which we'll probably get to when it comes to ors, like kochira, sochira. All right, whoa, interesting. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Cute. This is a fantastic movie, by the way. Fantastic movie. It's an Asian American movie. So now that we understand the basic idea of soato words, let's take a look at our best picture, right? Best picture 2000. Ah, man, has it been that long? Maybe 2014, 2013? Oh, not 14, 13. 2020. Wait, hold up. Has it been that long? No. Right? 2022. 2022's picture of the year. You personally missed this image at Kore Kono topic? You personally missed this image? Oh, interesting. Let's take a look at our Japanese. That's a new word for me. Diasis. Basis?
Deixis.
Diasis. Interesting. These words known as dialects or indexicals point to real world context rather than having a fixed meaning. Interesting. Words or phrases whose meaning depends entirely on the situational context in which they're spoken. That describes a lot of things. AI overview. Okay. Alright. Diasis diagram. Language spatial relations diagram, and learn a bit more about how the Japanese language works as a whole. All right, everywhere. Let's see. What are they saying? Knowledge that is intimate to ko. Yes. Yeah, knowledge that is intimate to so. Right? And then knowledge that's intimate to a. And then knowledge that is intimate to ko and so. sure, right? Then knowledge that is intimate to ko and right? Fair enough. Knowledge that is mutually intimate among all. That's interesting. Knowledge that's intimate to so and right? Okay. Do not complicate things. Let's just focus on the fact that koso represents any of the kosoado words in this diagram, regardless of whether it is a thing, a place, or a concept. All words will always refer to the speaker's frame of reference, right? So words will always refer to the listener's frame of reference, and words can either refer to something that is shared knowledge or distance from both the speaker and listener. Eventually there's going to be a topic, I imagine, about giving and receiving, which can be drawn analogous to this. So giving or receiving is going to be interesting. I'm curious what kind of diagram they're going to use. Often in Japanese, subjects and pronouns, because giving and receiving deals with point of reference. So the frame of reference depends. Loaning, borrowing, giving, and receiving is also dependent on the frame of reference. If you're specifically talking about the receiver or the giver in third or first person, and which direction are you talking about? The giver giving something to the receiver or the receiver receiving something from the giver? So that type of thing would require one of these diagrams too, or something similar to these diagrams. Often in Japanese, subjects and pronouns, etc. are left out, but one of the reasons for this is because the kosoado framework innately exists within a conversation. That's fair. So references to any of these words will tell the listener straight away what kind of relationship the speaker has to it. This is why it sounds like a speaker is trying to distance themselves from something. Interesting. When they use are. Oh, okay. When the are in question is not shared, right? It's like saying, oh, that thing I know about but don't want to think about as part of myself. That's fair. That's right. That's on cue. When both the speaker and the listener do not know what it is about, though, it will come across as A plus B plus C because they both don't know it. We both know the thing, but like, don't make me say it situation. Like they have it in common that they don't want to mention it. They both want to distance. We'll learn about do specifically a bit later, but in short, is basically used for asking questions. Yeah. Taurus troubles. All right, I see shop, mise, or ya, mise, era, and restaurant. Right, so let's look at what they say. Let's listen.
サリー、すみません。八百屋はここですか？ももこ、ここは銀行です。八百屋はあそこです。サリー、あそこ、赤い建物ですか？ももこ、あ、それは神社です。有名な日本の神社ですよ。八百屋はあそこの建物です。サリー、見えます。ありがとうございます。ももこ、いいえ。あ、そこも有名なレストランですよ。肉、魚も美味しい。パンもコーヒーも有名です。サリー、ありがとうございます。晩ご飯は肉を食べます。ももこ、いってらっしゃい。
Okay. So, Sari is Well, that's kind of interesting. But Sadi is probably the one with the backpack because she's the one that's traveling, right? Excuse me. The store is the store here. It was pointing to the map, right? It's my initial thought is she would be Sadi would be holding the map to show to Momoko, and then pointing, but that maybe Momoko took the map and it's like, you know. And so she asks, they use yaoya. Yaoya is a way to refer to the grocery store, like a very, like specifically a grocery store. And like a place that has produce, so to speak, as opposed to using like mise or konbini or something like a convenience store place. So very specifically yaoya, and this is a exceptional read. And then she said, well, this is here is the bank, right? Momoko says, here is the bank. The grocery store is over there. And then you're imagining her like pointing to probably the map as opposed to like literally the place. The interesting thing is now you have to think about what they said up here, right? So the whole like intimacy thing. So it doesn't quite, it's a little tough framing it around the intimacy thing. So she's asking a question despite saying it's a point of reference from her. So not to overcomplicate things. So we won't overcomplicate it for the time being, right? And then Sari said, Asoko. So like over there, like the red building, right? So referring to the red building, she might be pointing at the map or pointing off in the distance. And then Momoko said, that's the temple, or that is the temple. It's a famous Japanese temple, right? And then we have the yo for the emphasize. The grocery store is the building, is that building. So I would imagine, since we haven't done prepositions or relative positions yet, you could imagine her pointing to the building next to the temple, maybe like far from both of them, right? And then Sadi is like, oh, I see, right? I see, and she's using the tenego. That's an important thing to also note. They're both using the entire time they're using tenego because they're strangers. So that's also another thing to say, like sumimasen, right? Koko desu ka, right? Asoko desu, right? You have des and mas form because they're strangers. That's also worth noting at all times. So like miemasu versus mieru, right? And then she says, I see, thank you very much, right? Arigatou gozaimasu, right? Tenego. And then this is one of the idiosyncrasies. So ie, she's saying like, oh, don't worry about it. Not necessarily ie as in no, right? I wonder if they translate it that way. Yeah, they translate no. So ie, despite it being no, it's like, oh, don't worry about it situation, right? And then she also said right? There is also a famous restaurant with the yo. So from our previous topic, meat, fish also, meat, fish also delicious, right? So delicious meat and delicious fish. The bread and coffee are famous, right? Are also famous. So let's see how they go about. No, That is also a famous restaurant. The meat and fish is good too, right? So the way this is ran, there is a colloquialness of inferring that there is a list here, which is interesting because we're doing a topic. That our last topic was on list, but when you read this, there's an inference of lists. So the meat and fish is good too. That's why I said and, despite there technically isn't an and, but the mo implies that they're referring to this. And then you can see that there's another way where you can do and, which is to say something also, which was not covered sort of in the last topic. So you can rattle casually off by saying, oh, also this, also that, also the next thing, and also that, as opposed to like do and right, do, or the non-exhaustive yeah, right. I was expecting this to happen, but it's interesting that they didn't incorporate how to and ya works. Then thank you very much again, right? And then she says she's going to eat meat for dinner, and it's going to be in the future. You're going to say she's going to be referring to the future because dinner hasn't happened yet. That's also a important thing to note, that contextually you should know it's the future tense, or like it's in the future. While it says it's non-past, you wouldn't read this as I eat meat for dinner, as opposed to I will have meat for dinner, largely because contextually when they're speaking like this, you have to understand that she's talking about what she's going to do, not what she is doing. And then iterashai is to take care, or like have a good time, or it's a way to wish someone good travels and whatnot, right? So there is a lot of subtext here when you're reading it, and that's kind of a lovely thing that you can try to infer. Obviously I'm pointing out the parts where, or I'm reminding myself the parts where you're inferring, because Japanese, we get to that point where Japanese, there is a bit more contextual things. Now, I talked about this before. That's not because English is not contextual. Nowadays, when you speak to people with NetSpeak, it is about this level of contextualness. Now, the reason why I feel that it's a similar level of contextualness online, not like when you're speaking. Maybe it's a little different if you're like in a workplace, or among colleagues, or in an academic institution. However, the common English colloquial requires this contextual awareness nowadays. And the reason that it reminds me of these things is because I typically I have to ask the question to form a normalized context. So when someone says like, yeah, my day was all right, what do you think that means? So contextually, if someone is like, for example, here's an English equivalent sometimes, or not really English equivalent, but how English can be contextual, to give this similar feeling. When someone asks, how's your day? What do you say? You could say my day is all right. And there's a contextual understanding to what all right means. And it's heavily dependent on whether they're going to say something else or not. So much like this, when she says, I'm going to non-pass, right? Non-past tense, eat meat for dinner, because of the nature of the situation and the stuff before and after it, or largely the stuff before it, it is inferred that she's going to do it. Now, when someone says, I'm all right, and says nothing else, the alright means it's a pleasantry. You're not here to ask, like, it's no big deal, basically. Alright is closer to no big deal or uneventful, versus it was alright, and then they proceed to tell you something about it. Then it was more than alright. It was something eventful that is alright. And that's kind of where English has been going. Less, but more contextual. And oftentimes, I find myself asking the same questions when I'm listening to people speak English. Now, for the record, this is my social norm in places like speaking to my parents and reading Japanese or seeing Japanese. In English, it's far more ambiguous. So the whole like relying on context in English is difficult because the English speakers are also diversified. Now, here's the kicker. Occasionally, I would bump into another person who is speaking Japanese, as in like they're trying to use their Japanese, but they're not from Japan, or like they're not native Japanese. Now, when they speak, what they mean by the Japanese, that's where the kicker comes in. So sometimes they would use, they want to express themselves, right? So this is where I highlighted the idea that despite rigid language usage, when a language gets adopted or get used from another person's cultural behavior, that ends up making the language more nebulous. So when someone says, "O genki desu ka?" right? They're asking, "Are you okay?" or "How's it going?" right? However, when they're asking, "O genki desu ka?" I am interpreting it. I can choose to interpret it the way Japanese would intend, or I interpret it as someone who is using Japanese to express what they really actually want to ask me from their cultural background. So then I would reply in Japanese. I can choose to reply in Japanese the way I think they're going to receive it, or I reply in the way Japanese people reply to it. So those things is like this Venn diagram, is like this diagram here. Now, intimacy, in the idea of intimacy, is also that two people are on the same page, so that you can do a diagram of communication using this exact diagram. So when the person asks "O genki desu ka?" right? Is it that they are asking in which it's A and B? Or are they asking in a different context? So that can be very difficult. And while we're learning all of these things in the context of Japanese normatives, we have to also come to the acceptance that, or at least me, the acceptance that I'm juggling two different types of roles here. The vast majority of people that I interact with are using Japanese, and they're learning the context of native Japanese, while at the same time, when they want to express themselves, it depends. Then it depends, because are you expressing yourself, or are you mechanically mirroring Japanese culture? I say this because in English, the norm is to assume that English is being expressive of the person. It's a consequence of English being the common language. So I typically ask. The typical thing is to test whether that person wants to speak more or not. For myself, my social norm is when you ask, how are you? I will continue the conversation. On the online, 9 out of 10 times, it's a pleasantry. In fact, you might not even have to say anything back. Like, how are you is hello. So that's kind of the tough part about doing Japanese, because Japanese, you can learn all these rules, you can learn all these nuances, as I mentioned before, because Japan itself is not fractional. Like, there's not as large of a fractionalization than English. English, when someone talks to you and they like say, "Oh yeah, you're really having a bad day today, aren't you?" And I'm like, are you being polite? Are you like jesting? Or do you really mean it? It would depend on the person's cultural background. Like, because there's not enough context. Like, sometimes they might just be joking, taking jabs. That's part of the cultural background of that person. Or like, I would take it seriously because that's part of my cultural background. Now, the thing about this is I'm more in this territory though. So whenever I'm talking about noticing, oh, they're obviously being very polite to each other, that's what I do in English. So I usually default to being polite in English, be very clear and concise in English, which is at odds with sometimes Japanese, because Japanese is contextualized. The context works because most people are on the same page. Now, in English, I am going to be real. I'm the one that's typically not on the same page. So most other people are on the same page because they find me instead. So usually there's some pre-selection. So when people talk in English, they sound similar to me. However, whenever I talk, I get misunderstood, which is very normal. So I don't really have a problem with it. Since it occurs very frequently, I understand what I need to do or what I should do. Hence why whenever I talk to someone like Procall and stuff, we would enter like a 2 or 3 hour discussion about miscommunication or like clarification. We would be clarifying to each other consistently when we're talking, largely because we come from different cultural backgrounds. Despite him, being British English and I'm being American, it still occurs very often in English. Japanese, not so much per se. It does occur more frequently, and by by naturalness, like by logic, it will occur more frequently when you have people outside of Japan living under different environmental situations, trying to mirror what it's like to have cultural norms in Japan. So we have to keep that in mind. In the future, when I'm speaking Japanese, it will be choosing between the two. Like, am I speaking to someone who likes to use Japanese to express themselves versus coincidentally they like to express themselves in Japanese, adhering to Japanese social norms. Those are like two different things, right? I speak English. I default to a type of English that represents my Chinese value system my parents impart. So typically my English will sound a little bit more are not kore, are, most of the time. And one of the ones, yes, like the last topic, when otosan, the father referred to himself as otosan, like in his statement, that's kind of what I typically sound like. It feels like most of my English is a bit distant. So when someone tries to ask me a question, right? Like, hey, what do you think is the best way to learn Japanese? When I speak, immediately I sound distant. It sounds like I'm talking about are, asoko the whole time. Like, and the reason why it's over there is because it is also far away from the person I'm talking to illustrate like what they are talking about here about intimacy. I often express opinions that are not my own. That is my default. However, from the perspective of the listener, the vast number of listeners that I encounter online, they assume when I speak distant, they assume I'm referring to my own opinions, which I don't. I actually use words like personally, in my opinion, I think, I consider, I use the pronoun to remove all ambiguousness. So I think, based on my experience, this is what I would attempt to do, right? So not, oh, I have heard that someone, that others or people have considered this. That is, are, you're distancing yourself from it. And it may or may not be known to your listener. So most of my English deals with this concept already. That's not to say that other people deal with this English concept. In most cases, this English concept is, or this concept in English, at least the English online, typically there's only two spheres. Like, usually, actually, most of the time it's like this sphere. Wait, I need black here. It's like here. This is typically like most of the time, more than 50% of the time, English is in this sphere. And then oftentimes, the reason why they're both one sphere without a detraction is often other opinions are presented by default as though it's your perspective. So like, I love this game. And I would ask the person, in what way do you love this game? And they would say something like, lots of people like it. So like, it can be that they like it because a lot of other people like it. So it's English right now in net speak is typically are and ore together. And then the listener generally assumes this. That's why when someone makes a comment, the listener tends to assume that the person is speaking their mind, speaking their own opinion. And that comes from the idea that online, when you interact with people, you're simply expressing your own opinion, right? Because you're having a parasocial relationship with everything. When you type a YouTube comment, you're speaking for yourself. Or the data, you're constantly speaking for yourself. The literal speaker is responsible for both the data they contain and them. So the most common English practice is that if someone says something, it is of their opinion or of the opinions they associate with. So there's no concept of dissonance, like a distance where it's neither the two, which that brings me to my miscommunication most of the time. I speak here first. I distance myself because I am unsure what the listener knows, and the listener should be accepting that they don't quite know what I know yet. That's why we talk. So this is kind of like how politeness works. that feeling that whatever I say feels like I'm keeping my distance away from it until we become more personal. So the intimacy circle is that I don't make assumptions about you, and you don't make assumptions about me. That's what politeness is. And I talk about politeness quite a bit, where people don't talk that way. They usually, what I hear when I'm the listener is that they project. Basically, I think this is a good game. And then it's inferring that you should too. You should think this is a good game most of the time. As opposed to, do you think this is a good game? I've heard a lot of things about this game. What do you think about this game? So, like, when you go and talk to a stranger, you're going to ask them what their thoughts are and share potential thoughts of other people. You're not sharing your personal thoughts first and assuming what their personal thoughts are going to be. Hence the concept, right? So I do quite enjoy this type of like reflection. I'm using like a English counterpart of how to explain these things because personally, the whole concept of see is not really present in NetSpeak. So when you're learning English online and speaking English online, it can definitely, in my opinion, be a little difficult to conceptualize the C bubble. So A plus C, ABC, and BC. This bubble right here is very difficult, in my opinion. And I'm not saying difficult as in you can't ever learn it. It's difficult because it's unfamiliar. It's quite unfamiliar. Though my reference that I typically make is go listen to a politician in English. Right? Listen to a politician. Maybe listen to a scientist or someone who is being asked personal questions. You can see them differentiate between what's here and what's here. Like, I'm not at liberty to say due to my inexperience. However, according to data that other researchers that have followed this phenomenon, they claim this to be the following. So it is not of my opinion, and I'm distancing myself from what I have read that is not of my opinion, but based on the experience of others. That is English that you would probably hear from a politician or someone educated in a public space that needs to take accountability for their own personal stuff, and that's the English that would happen. So do streamers sound like that? Do content creators typically sound like that? Do colloquial people online sound like that? No. Do comments, podcasts, like reactions, do they sound like that? They do not. So it's not a social norm. And for myself, this was refreshing. It's one of the more refreshing things about seeing a language. When you're learning Japanese, it may be able to help you or help, like, encourage, maybe perhaps why politicians, why like the dislike about English and politicians and educators or scientific technicality and whatnot, why it's very important to use that type of language. And it is baked into Japanese acceptance, largely because of like honne, right? Honne and tatemae. You have to keep yourself, your personal emotions and your personal connections fairly exclusive from your public space, from your public face, the face culture, like 面子, right? For the Chinese idea, the face. You're in public space, you're trying not to be personal. You do not want to sound direct. And you can do that in English. The thing is, most of the English-speaking countries, like countries that embrace English to some way, they are habitually westernized. So it is socially normative to be a little bit expressive and direct. Not that the language itself may be inherently expressive and direct, like the tools in the language, the behavior also is reflective. You are more often likely to normally express your opinions. It's commonly accepted. So it's like chicken or the egg situation. Is the language inherently expressive, or the people using the language inherently more expressive, and therefore the language became that, like the more common things heard due to the tool being used that way? For me, it's the latter, largely because English has often been a common miscommunication that I have. Not that I don't understand being direct in English. Like, I can be forward in English. I genuinely and generally choose not to. So when learning Japanese, this is a core principle, like one of the core principles, only because, in my opinion, largely because Japan's culture and their language is still largely exclusive to Japan and the social norms. In English, the sky's the limit. If you surround your life with politicians and educators and intellectuals, you'll get used to the common vernacular in science. Like when me and my best friends talk, like my colleague best friends, the ones that I knew that are well educated, it's not a bad or a good thing. It's a status that typically leads to this. When we talk about things and express our opinions, we talk at a distance. Despite being personal with each other, we don't make bold claims like, what are your thoughts about this movie? There were a lot of talks about this movie being an excellent demonstration of this. I seemingly agree with this. What are your thoughts about it? Not this movie was great, right? Like, I thought this movie was awesome. You must have thought this movie was awesome, right? That doesn't happen very often, right? Even when I'm really personal with my best friends, I would want to ask them what their opinions are. And that's where it gets into Japanese, where like, I remember someone way back telling me like, oh yeah, hoshi, don't use this to express other people's desires. Like, I'm aware of that. Like, because it's very important to me. You don't express other people's desire. You try to work around how to infer or suggest they may desire this thing. All those English words I rarely ever hear come out of people's mouths or typed in online. They do not ever use are. They typically use I think, the truth is that. Not even the truth is, it's more like I think that, and it's inferred that they know. That's this diagram is fantastic. I'll have to think about how I would come up with an anecdote in English to parallel this concept in the future. Anyways, just thought I'd share something. Let's do one more topic because I have time for one more topic today. Oh wait, did I not mark it? I didn't mark it. Mark it. Super interesting topic. Very interesting. Notice when I said it's super interesting topic, I just now said super interesting topic. Now the question is, was I referring to my own personal opinion? Well, since I said it was super interesting is a neutral word. So I didn't say like, oh, I love this topic. That's a different story. The topic is interesting, and it can be interesting to a lot of people. I usually use words like interesting because it's a neutral word. Like, you could find it interestingly bad. I could find it interestingly good. I'm not using any personal words. So English deals quite a lot with diction. And whenever someone tries to get close to me, or when they're trying to learn something from me or get to know me, it can be very difficult, right? Because most of my English is very distant. Like when someone asks me, what is your favorite game? And I would answer by saying, well, depending on your criteria, like if you are willing to share what your criteria is when qualifying favorite game, here are the following things that I may be able to qualify as favorite. Let's use frequency, for example. If it was based on frequency, then this particular game would be my game because it has the largest number, it has the most playtime on it across my lifetime. Now, it sounds very distant, even though I'm sharing something personal. So usually English, you have to distance yourself using your kind of the wiggle room I'm saying is you end up sounding like a politician or like a scientist being pedantic. That's the feeling that English speaker or someone who's in a westernized culture who's speaking English would feel like. It's like, why do you say it like that? Like, why are you saying it like it's something void of feeling and also a bit distant? Like you're not really answering from your own personal side. It's because that's how I would speak to another person. And when someone refers or defers to like, oh, so then you love this game, it's like, I didn't say I love this game. I said based on frequency, if frequency is a qualifier for favorite, then I have played this game the longest, which can be in an inference to fulfill your definition of favorite. I didn't say I love the game. That's a different story. If I love the game, I would say I love the game. That's kind of what happens often. English, there's a lot of inference too. There's a inherent contextual inference. Now, the thing is, it's not as homogeneous as Japan. So whenever you're learning these things, it's concise or more concise, relatively speaking. It's still an apples and oranges comparison. However, when it's unified, still 99% in Japan, you can do that. In English, a great example of this phenomenon that Japan has, go into an echo chamber. The internet has made it very excellent as a social environment, a social experiment to understand your appreciation for Japanese. So this is my maybe a hot take or my provocative reason for learning Japanese. When one appreciates what Japanese is doing, like the whole intimacy and politeness, use that. Test that out with English if you're an English speaker, right? Test that out in a echo chamber, in a internet echo chamber. Because when you become aware, like since you're learning Japanese, you're constantly like trying to get your head into the Japanese mindset, like why do they do these things? Why are they motivated to do these things, etc. and so on. Now apply that same attentiveness, like that attention to detail, right? And focus on that. Now go into a Discord that is for a niche thing, or go into a larger Discord that is enriched for something. The English changes, and the English has so much contextual inference. The more closed off the community is, that creates a microcosm for understanding why Japan has these nuances and rules that are very consistent. So, because I feel like the appreciation for this is a bit tough, largely because most people, at least in my opinion, are familiar that are learning Japanese are likely going to be more familiar with the noisiness that is English. And I think that is what makes learning English an apples and oranges comparison. You're not learning English in the same nature as Japanese for that matter. You can manage to have that experience though online. So that's one of the few places that you can go into like a Discord of Japanese language learners who speak English versus a Discord of Japanese or of physics learners who speak English. And immediately you can see the English shift. And when they say things, they're inferring so many things. Like the context of English just shifts entirely. So whenever I can give you an example of NetSpeak. Whenever someone says TBH, I literally think usually like I have to remind myself that they don't mean they lie most of the time. Like, to be honest, to be frank is to be direct. The thing is, on NetSpeak, like on Twitch and YouTube, when someone says TBH, it no longer means that. So contextually, you have to understand that, all right, well, are you on Twitch right now and this person's speaking? The likelihood is when they say TBH, they actually don't infer that they were being distant before. They're using it for emphasis, not to be personal. Like when I say to be frank with you, I am being personal now. I'm shifting from being distant to personal. TPH, I'm not being honest. Fictitious. Thanks, Fictitious, for the comment. So for me, I have come to learn that like I joke around every once in a while and people don't understand I'm joking. Like Fictitious, what he said. When someone says TBH, this game really sucks. And I'm like, so you were lying before? That would be my inside joke. However, it wouldn't make any sense to most people because TBH means they are saying this game does really suck. Like it is emphasizing that the game sucks. It's not saying that they're being honest or more personal now. They're literally emphasizing. And literally is another one, right? Literally, figuratively, presumption, assumption. Assumption just means presume. Compare means contrast only. So these are like Twitch bubble. But then you get like even smaller bubbles that can create English, contextual English, which is crazy. When I was growing up before these echo chambers, you don't have these sudden shifts. Like you get whiplash from English when someone from a small or like a echo chamber start talking to you. Like yesterday or 2 days ago, drama, right? I do this too, right away. So I slip up too when I get into echo chambers for too long. Drama said, oh, I was listing off the different Persona games, right? P3, P3R, P3P, and stuff. And Drama said, oh, what about P4A? And my first thought was like, but P4A is an anime, the animation. So, well, I can't do anything about that. I can't stream animation. And then he corrected me and he said, oh no, like he means Persona 4 Arena. Now, then I immediately respond like, I don't think P4, I know it says Persona 4 Arena, but it's not abbreviated P4A. It's abbreviated P4U. P4 Persona 4 Arena Ultramax. And it's called Persona 4 the Ultimate. So P4U. because P4A stands for P4 animation and P4 golden animation. So that's what happens in English. It's echo chambers produce contextual misunderstanding for a lot, like really often. And I don't know if that happens in Japanese. It would be really interesting. Well, we'll see in the future. We'll do one more topic though. Let's do one more topic. I can't tell you how often, like, my communication skills are probably largely because of how often I have miscommunications with people in English. So whenever I think about how some people want to like go to Japan, right, live in Japan, learn all of its idiosyncrasies and stuff, and then have harmony, right, be like not needing to know new context and how attractive the Japanese language and Japan is, I think it's also very correlating. Okay, not causation, but it's very correlating, because when you spend a lot of time online and the Discord servers that you have, the places that you go, the virtual space that you go, feels like Japan. As in, you go in and you never have to communicate very descriptively or having to solve problems and miscommunication. Most people are on the same page. And that elegance, that coincidence that Japan still is a great place that has that, it, in my opinion, is coincidental but also cathartic. So having rules and then everyone speaking with those rules can be very awesome. And for myself, when I'm thinking about these, like, yeah, like, Japan is fantastic and I would love to go there temporarily, but generally speaking, like, I'm everywhere. So for the most part, my skill sets and stuff deal with miscommunication and comparing and contrasting this stuff. So that's why I'm talking about it in this way. It will be interesting in the future to see. I'm like maybe 2 or 3 years now when Japanese of all the languages are punching way above its homogeneity. So like the heterogeneous, like the mosaicness of Japanese usage is starting to show, like especially online, where even someone like myself would say like, well, yeah, I get it that it's not native Japanese, but at the same time, it's adapting Japanese to the environment that it is being used now, which is on Twitch or online or through anime. Like a lot of people would argue, right? Native Japanese speakers may argue that it's like, oh, okay, all these kids are learning Japanese by listening to these easy listening people and reading manga and anime. It's existed even prior to social media, right? And they're like, oh, their Japanese is weird now, like it sounds like youth culture and whatnot. And then you get the native speakers in Japanese that we don't sound like that, right? That type of thing. And here I'm saying the same thing about English. Whenever I log off, right, I don't speak on stream, I still sound a little bit weird or unnatural to the substantial number of content creators, in my opinion. And I don't even know them, and I'm willing to bet that I substantially sound different in a room. If I had a conversation with them, what I would typically do is match their energy. So I would change my diction and change the way I speak when I'm speaking in someone else's domain, basically. Like if I show up in someone else's like content or something, I would be speaking very appropriately because it is their environment, right? Are speak in their environment, not speak in mine. So here I sound like this. However, I'm still also changing my voice a bit to compromise. I think the closest thing that someone can get to how I typically sound in my head is probably in the Discord when because the Discord is my personal echo chamber. So whenever someone asks a question in Discord, then they will probably hear how I typically sound. Like it's like it's dictionary prone, like it's hyper aggressively technical or rambling verbosity and consistent uses of rhetoric with detractions and leaps of logic that I'm inferring other people may follow. When I'm on stream, I'm trying to be as concise, literal as possible because that reflects the appropriateness. Curious where Japanese is going to go from here, honestly. All right, so let's do our last lesson, which is very important, by the way. This is the segue into this. The next one is minding your manners, right? Minding your manners is so at odds with live streaming. It makes me like dramatically dramatic irony, like dramatic ironically laugh about this concept that people who are chronically on the internet is trying to understand minding your manners, because it's at odds with the whole idea of the internet. You aren't minding your manners. When you're online, you're trying not to mind your manners. You're trying to be expressive, invasive, and constantly probing. So it's funny to me, it's very humorous that learning Japanese may make people online more wary about their concept of minding your manners. Hello there, drama. All right, so let's go through this topic here. So in this bonus topic, the last topic in each section is pretty wonderful. We're going to learn more essential phrases and see how they use in real life situations, like at a shop or a restaurant. Japanese customers, service workers are famous for being incredibly polite, right? The word is polite, not the same as nice or kind, right? Polite. And what they say generally follows a specific script, right? We already talked about the lack of fractionalization in Japan, so hence why we can read topics like this. If you know your lines, then everything becomes much easier, which is very net speak friendly. Details. Let's take a tour through a variety of common situations where manners come in handy. Welcome. Irashaimasa. Irashaimase. When entering a store, it is normal to hear the shout irashaimase. This means something like welcome, and the customer is not expected to say anything back, although a polite smile or small bow of the head is fine. I usually bow. I actually bow on a normal basis. So like when I'm receiving a gift, when I walk into a shop, I actually do bow. Like I nod forward. Like I would see the cashier or something, or like the waitress, and I would actually nod. So that is actually a thing I do while living in the United States. So not abnormal to me. I was watching a JP blog, and then the person checked into a hotel. It was just white noise for you. Are you, how does that make you feel, drama? The white noise. Once in the store, you can catch the attention of staff saying sumimasen, right, excuse me, in more casual restaurants such as a ramen shop or an izakaya, a Japanese pub. It is okay to call for the waiter across the room. In fact, they normally won't come to serve to you until you have to call for them. You could argue that if you're outside of a very busy restaurant or something in the United States, it's the opposite. It's typically the opposite. The waiter comes to you because they're expected to come to you. and they're expected to see to you at all times. That is what their service is. So to provide like a fairly interesting contrast of decorum, it is expected, like it is entitled, you are entitled as the customer to be served. Obviously, just because you're entitled doesn't mean it happens all the time, because the waiter could be like we're talking about the social norms here. So it's a very I bring this up because my parents work in restaurants. My parents used to work restaurants, and restaurants run by Chinese people and Vietnamese people are very, it happens when Americans from other cultures may have differing expectations. So what's considered potentially rude is also largely a miscommunication social norm. Like you have to call the people to get, you have to get their attention to be served often. And lots of the hybrid restaurants, at least around the United States, would be you actually literally go up to the counter and do it, and then go back to your seat, and then they'll bring it out, and then they won't ever return back to your table unless you specifically address them. So this creates a very frequent, in my opinion, in my personal life, it creates more of a frequent time when it feels a little weird. And this sensitivity does occur between different types of Americans. It's a funny sight. I think it's for me, growing up in the United States and being an Asian American, I think it's endearing. It's very quaint. It reminds me that I live in a country with a lot of different people. so obviously, the people who get angry, or someone gets angry, or maybe they just make up, it all happens, all of them. Sometimes the customer would get angry, sometimes they would find out, sometimes they would make up, or they learn something, and sometimes you can see another person adopt another decorum, or vice versa. It's the mixed bag when we talk about fractionalization. You were like, yeah, Japanese, easy understanding everything, and then they gave me the reality check. Oh, so that's how you felt. Okay. But it's whatever. You haven't put time into learning Keigo. Oh, yeah, the restaurant Keigo. Fair enough. Yeah, the Keigo forms. In a Japanese Netflix show, there's a guy in Rent just eating, and then he had to go into a Chinese restaurant, and they showed it as the worst experience you could have. A retired guy. The German coming out. Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember I had a few acquaintances before, and we walked into a Vietnamese place, a Vietnamese American place, largely Vietnamese, and the children were Vietnamese American that also worked. It's typical that the second gen children will be also present in the restaurant, and it was a pho place. And we sat down, and I was looking through the menu, and my company were looking around thinking that the waiter was gonna come to them. And my first thought was, oh no, we're just gonna pick something, and then I'm gonna order for you. I'm gonna go up, let's decide, and then I'll go up and to the counter to order the food, and then they'll bring it to the table, right? And then throughout the meal, they would ask oh, I think we need more napkins, or I need another spoon, and they're out of spoons. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. And then I would go up to the counter to ask them if they have something and bring it back. And was one of the interactions, right? Because that's one of the social norms that happens. Not all, obviously. Again, the United States is noisy, right? There are Vietnamese establishments, like Vietnamese American establishments, where they went the other way. They understand that their customers are more of the other clientele, as in the European variety descendants, and then they would adapt their strategy to it. However, when you go to like a local place, a place where, let's say you go to like a Chinatown, for example, and their customers are largely Chinese immigrants or Chinese natives that are visiting, then you get the opposite because they're adapting to their clientele. So oftentimes when you walk into like a Vietnamese establishment that's in like the white American suburbs, their mentality is different. They would like weigh on you, ask you if you want water or something every like 5 minutes because they realize that business is better that way. So that's kind of, and I could use Chinese restaurants as a reason too. Like it varies, depends on the clientele. So you have to look around and look at the context. And we have to keep in mind historically, like for example, Chinese and Japanese by extension, most of their behavior is contextual. It's about being polite, right? So whatever fits their clientele is the most polite thing to do. So when you walk in and you feel self-entitled to special service, that's a lot more of a westernized concept. Not for bad or good. I actually think it feels kind of interesting to not have to. I'm a person who don't mind working for my food, so it's largely because that has become the social norm. It is really interesting to be waited on all the time. Like I walked into an Indian restaurant Indian American. The most of the waiters and hosts are first generation. They're immigrants. However, their Indian restaurant is a very posh place, and it's in a very affluent neighborhood that are not like Indians or populated by like Indian immigrants or like any form of Asian variety or whatnot. So it looks like it looks like a fancy diner, like not even a fancy diner, like a fine dining place. And it's crazy how charismatic the host is and the servers are. And it reminded me very much of Western European fine dining. So that's kind of the fun, yeah, at least in my opinion, the fun thing about going to restaurants in the United States. It's such a a mosaic of stuff. Samurai Gourmet is the name of the show, episode 2. Intriguing. Samurai Gourmet. I'll have to look at that. You are one with me when it comes to these things for sure. The whole like voyeur of observing chance encounters between strangers while like over a social normative activity like eating food. I'll have to check this out. Ooh, it looks like it's got a lot of buzz, especially from the Midnight Diner peeps. I have to take a look at it, Drama. Thanks for sharing. Okay, all right. So we do have to keep going today, make sure, because of a shortened day. I have to address something in the evening. It's a fun show. I'll have to take a look at it. Thanks for sharing. I like your description of the reality check. Okay, all right. So, anyways, let's listen to this.
いらっしゃいませ。今日は人参が安いですよ。
Ah. Right, we have all your politeness gone down.
すみません。ビールはないですか?
This one is this one, like saying do you not have beer versus do you have beer. This one is something that me and like Japanese tendency are at odds with each other a bit. I was always biru arimasu. Oh, arimasu. Oh, arimasu ka? Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're doing there. Like, I was about to say that. I was just about to say that. So, in English, right, or like how I would hear myself in English, I would do a confirmation as opposed to a negation. So, like, do you not have beer would be like what I would think a Japanese, like when I hear something, like a person comes in like a Japanese environment, I would hear this. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that means what I mean. What I would mean. However, I would say this if I was in Japanese, but I would actually confirm whether there is beer in English. So by happenstance, there's a chance then I would default to saying if there is beer in Japanese. So we already talked about this. There's a combinatory preference here, right? Even though you also hear biru arimasu, yeah, arimasen desu ka? I would ask, I would typically, there is no beer sounds weird. Yeah, exactly. So that's why drama, you literally illustrated my point earlier when I was talking about how there's a chance that these things are gonna change over time, like because of like social behaviors versus the language itself. And this is a good one where I think it's normal when it comes out of a Japanese environment. Like what I mean is when I'm watching anime or like a news program or like a talk show and there's a scene like this where you're framing it this way. And in English, I actually have a tendency to do the opposite, largely because it makes me feel weird to assume the negative in order to ask if there is something. And weirdly enough, the kiddos online do this more often in English now. Like, did you not play this game yet? Listen to it. That you can ask yourself, does that sound normal? Most people would ask me, did you not play the game yet? Versus, did you play it yet? Right? So that is becoming more frequent, using the negative sense, which is really funny because then they would find this not weird. Like, oh, are there not any good options? I'm like, what? You think the not version is more the surprised version, like expected something? Yes. It's supposed to be. In English it's not, to me. The more expected version is the one that is positively affirming. Because what is not there doesn't confirm anything. Like personally, like a social norm. So when you say, are there not any good games on Steam? I'm like, what are the chances that there are not any good games on Steam versus there are good games on Steam? And then you have to think about, do you want to sound positive or negative? This is what I use to tell if someone is negative-minded, or they have a social norm that is pessimistic, or they're expecting something that is a social norm that's mechanical. So when we're learning this example, it's seen as a mechanical response. So you're describing something that's mechanically expected at the moment, not sentimentally or comprehensively resonating yet, but it could be the one and the same in the future. When someone asks, did you not have a good time? Like you went out, right? You went out with someone and had a meal and say, hey, did you not have a good time? Like, you mean, are you expecting that we weren't having a good time, or are you saying that to contrast because we're having such a good time? Or are you saying it because lots of people say it now and that is the normal way to express those things? This example. And yes, I do read into that subtextually most of the time. I try to find clever ways to figure out whether it's true or not. Ramen, ramen, not. Oh yeah, want to eat ramen? Yeah, want to grab ramen? I know, I know. You don't have to explain it. Yeah, yeah. Ramen nai means want to grab ramen. That's how the American, like, to me, that's how people ask now. In English too. Like, hear me out. Here's a analogous for English. Ramen doesn't sound bad. Ramen doesn't sound bad. What do you think they're saying? They're asking if you want ramen. Because, yeah, like they would answer or ask a question depending on the intonation. So I'm like, or instead of saying ramen is good or I'm good with ramen, they would say ramen is not bad. As opposed to like say ramen is okay. You know, 大丈夫だ, right? Ramen 大丈夫だ. It would be the opposite. Also, hear me out. It's a slight pet peeve. It's no longer too much of a pet peeve, but double negatives, triple negatives, and unconfirmations as confirmations is pretty rampant in on NetSpeak now. Like, oh yeah, that's not bad, right? Is far more preferable than either that's all right, that's fine, that's not bad. Ramen kirai. Do you hate ramen? So everything is framed now. Now hear me out. Why am I making a big deal about this? Because I have to make sure that people aren't being negative intentionally anymore. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, when someone says "biru wa nai desu ka," right? That doesn't guarantee that the person is being negative. It, like, not for the sake of Japanese, but imagine if someone asks in English, "Do you not have beer?" It might be mechanical now, like mechanically opposite. So it's shift recently where someone would I might misinterpret someone having a bad day or not liking something. However, they simply have shifted their social norms to saying the negative as a form of confirmation rather than what it means. Like, man, are there no good restaurants here? Like, when we visit somewhere, it's like, man, are there no good restaurants here? Like, what do you mean there are no good restaurants? Are you assuming that there's not going to be good restaurants here? Like, and they were simply asking, like, is there somewhere good to eat? Like, can you find a place to eat? And I'm like, but you just asked, are there no good restaurants here? So, and that's like, I'm there with you. Even without using Japanese, I'm still there with you, drama. Like, and this is specifically for people who spend a lot of time online, where they phrase things in the negative, and I'm not quite sure if they want me to it's I'm not quite sure what they want me to do in that case. Like, isn't this not as good as you think? Okay, give me a sec. Is this not as good as you think? So, are they asking me, is it better than I thought? Or like, is it worse than I thought? Are they asking me how good this is or how bad this is? I'm not entirely sure anymore. So, same deal. I would say same deal. Isn't this not as good as you didn't think? Now that's an exaggeration. I do have a natural one. I didn't think that was as bad as I thought. I heard that multiple times. And yes, it doesn't quite make sense because they said I thought. I kid you not, this happens so often. They would say, I didn't think that was as bad as I thought. And my first thought is, okay, grammatically, that's fine, I think. But comprehensively, I have no idea what they said. So they didn't think that was as bad. Then how do they have the thought of, this happens so often now. I can't, it's difficult for me to like, I legitimately sit down and I ask myself, okay, but they didn't think it was as bad. And then, but what does the thought mean? Like, so are they referring to as bad as they thought, right? So they initially thought it was bad, and they found out that no, see, that I don't know. I earnestly do not know. So I asked to clarify. Usually I don't, when I hear this, it's white noise. Like, I'm going to echo what you just said, Drama. And I understand these words, Drama. Like, I understand these words. It's also double passed. I know. So, like, I don't know. I have no idea what they mean. So, if we have a white noise moment, this is a white noise moment. And I hear this and read this a lot. Like, effectively, I have no idea what they mean. So I would ask politely most of the time, what do you mean by that? Did you enjoy it or did you not enjoy it? Or did you enjoy it more than you expected? Or did you enjoy it less than you expected? Or did you hate it more than you expected? Or did you dislike it? You know, I will use different words. I don't usually use the word hate, but dislike it more than you expect. And so I turned everything into the affirmation, to the positive tense, right? Did you think as much, as less, right? So then I can get a confirmation as opposed to like, whatever this means. I'm actually still not clear. And this is a common response. It's literally like one of the most common response when you ask for an opinion. Like, oh, how was the movie? I didn't think it was as bad as I thought. And my first thought is, so it was good. Like, well, I don't know. I thought it was this, but I didn't think it was like this, so I didn't think it was as bad as I thought. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna assume you're fine with it. Like, all right, 大丈夫だね, right? 大丈夫だね. That's all I got. We're fine. We're moving on. How did the test go? I didn't think it was as bad as I thought. Like, all right, fine, whatever. uh, Good stuff. I tell you, good stuff. All right, there are multiple ways to say please in Japanese. The most common two phrases are kudasai or and onegai shimasu. You didn't think. You didn't think. Kudasai is generally used for direct requests, often towards someone of equal or lower status. Onegai shimasu is more general and polite. It feels like a demand and more. It feels less like a demand and more like you are entrusting someone with a task. Yeah, please, I trust you to help me. In fact, its little translation is "I wish for you." I wish for that. Yeah, like please. I wish if you could help me with something or do me this wish. We can use either to ask for or order an item. Yes, kudasai and onegai shimasu. We can use either to ask. So
あなた、
omizu.
お水をください。
So this is actually the first Duolingo lesson. But stick with onegai shimasu for sure. These two are, if not, it's within the first section. Both of these, onegai shimasu and kudasai. Onegai shimasu. Or you can be like an anime character and just say onegai. No, don't do that.
あなた、これとサラダをお願いします。
I'm sorry. There are two versatile phrases which cover most. Yeah. だってばよ。信じる。You know? 信じる。ビール一本お願い。Okay, we're being a little silly now. I think this is probably gonna make people cringe pretty hard. The datebayo is pretty good though. There are two versatile phrases which cover most apologies: sumimasen and gomennasai. Gomennasai. We have sorry, now I'm thinking of other anime things with sorry. We have just seen that sumimasen can be used to get someone's attention. However, it can also be used as a light apology when causing someone an inconvenience. Yeah, like pardon me. In speech, you will often hear it being pronounced like suimasen. Oh yeah, true. Suimasen. Yeah, that is a good point. That is a very good point.
近所の人、明日は暇ですか？あなた、すいません。明日は忙しいです。
Fair enough. I heard suimasen is more Osaka dialect. Yeah, Osaka. So, the reason why they say this suimasen is because a lot of type of entertainment, like at least the entertainment that I watch, come from Osaka. So the Kansai accent. So like one of the the bigger entertainment stuff, like talk shows and stuff, come out of Osaka, and not like Tokyo. So like you'll still hear, obviously, if you're watching news and stuff, it probably be in Kanto, but whenever I watch talk shows and lots of entertainment online and whatnot, you'll hear suimasen because of Osaka being a entertainment center. The CR7 version. On the other hand, the more serious or personal apologies, gomen nasai, right, gomen nasai, is used in casual situations. It may be shortened to gomen, yeah, in casual situations, right?
先生、宿題は？高校生、ごめんなさい。明日やります。
Fair enough. Using yaru.
お母さん、今日はあなたがご飯を作るよね。お父さん、ごめん、今日は出かける。
Jack of all trades. Oh, we have yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Is a Japanese phrase which you'll hear in all sorts of different contexts. It is used when meeting people for the first time, when signing off a polite request at work, when asking a formal favor, and so on, right? So it can be taken to literally mean, please treat me favorably, indeed. But it is quite flexible in its real usage. In casual, it may be yoroshiku, right? Yoroshiku. Okay.
さき、私はさきです。よろしくお願いします。ゆい、私はゆいです。さきさん、よろしくお願いします。
Very first, probably either the first or second lesson. This is actually one of the first or second lessons in Wakotabi, because the first thing you have to do is walk in and introduce yourself, and they welcome you, and so all of this topic is Wakotabi's first thing, and you hear it so often.
先生、明日の教室は新しいです。あそこの青の建物です。学生、ありがとうございます。月曜日のピアノの練習よろしくお願いします。
At rising, it.
ケン、僕はケン、よろしく。あつし、ケン、よろしくな。
And even integrated the na from the other topic to contrast with yo and ne. And yone. Finally, dozo. Dozo is, yep, is another multi-purpose word. It is used most commonly when allowing someone to do something or handling something over to someone. Yeah, dozo or dozo, like as in this way or come in, or allowing, right, permitting.
男の人、質問をどうぞ。私が答えます。店の人、どうぞ。温かいお茶です。
Izakaya. All right, so we got the diner situation. Let's look at this. Ooh, it's a relatively long.
店の人、いらっしゃいませ。店の人、冷たいお水です。どうぞ。拓也、ありがとうございます。
Okay.
拓也、すみません。店の人、はい。拓也、ここはステーキが有名ですか？店の人、有名ですね。ビールも美味しいですよ。ワインセットはステーキと魚です。ビールセットはステーキと寿司です。A も B もサラダとデザートがつきます。セットが安いですよ。
Dang.
拓也、じゃあビールセットをお願いします。店の人、ありがとうございます。店の人、どうぞ、ビールセットです。拓也、いただきます。美味しいですね。拓也、ごちそうさま。店の人、ありがとうございました。
Okay. All right. So, welcome, right? The attendant, welcome. Cold water, like here, cold water, right? Thank you. Excuse me. Acknowledgement. The steak here is famous, right? or like, is the steak here famous, or however you want to say it. They're just simply saying the steak here is famous. And then, yes, it's famous, right, as a confirmation because we have the ne. And then the beer is also delicious, emphatic, right? And the wine set, right, concerning the wine, basically the wine set or the wine itself, and the steak with fish. Does that mean they're together? Then beer set concerning the beer in the beer set, basically. This is in the wine set, beer set, and then the steak with sushi, right? And then A and B, or A also B, etc. There's salad, and it's included with salad, and you think both? Yeah. The steak is concerning with the set. You have both, right? Like, and then concerning the beer set, you have both. And then A and B, and then the salad and what is this? I wasn't sure what this is. Is included, and then the set is very cheap, right? Oh, desato. Dessert, of course. Sorry. Yeah, reading katakana is still not my jam. Still not. Yeah, desato is included, right? And this is a special use of tsuki, right? Tsukeru, the inevitable, flexible tsukeru. It means to be included. And okay, and it's like, all right, well then, ja, well then, the beer set, please, the beer set. And thank you. Here, beer set, right? And it's like, time to eat. Yes, it's very delicious in an assertive ne, right? And then, right, thank you for the service, gochiso sama. And then I was waving because you can kind of see thank you very much as they're going off. Because gochiso sama, you can be walking out while you're saying that. Very neat. Very neat. Your very, very standard stock situation. Usually I would walk in and I would say susume wa, right? I would point to the menu, and then they would go into this. So there's gonna be a susume wa or something like that. It could be inserted here somewhere. As opposed to like koko wa steiki ga yume desu ka? I could just simply add susume wa. Like what do they recommend? Situation, and then they will go into this as well. Really neat. All right, that's gonna be our last topic for today. I absolutely love spending so much time on these topics. You know, it would be kind of awesome if they released the N4 one by the time I complete this. I'm spending so much time with these topics, but it's really fun reading the end examples because they are as like contextually predictable, and I can read through them and also mention in real time as we're going what the nuances are as we're going by, and then I can conjure up a analogous comparison using English diction and whatnot, since I spent so much time thinking about these things, like all these situations. When I was learning for the first time, I spent most of the time thinking about these situations analogously, and that's how I remember those concepts far more than. And it might not be as accessible the way I'm saying I learned it, because most of these mannerisms and stuff are what I use in English. So the analogies that I have in English are things that I myself personally do and how I sound. Especially the going back to that little nod about announcing yourself. I announce myself in English, and oftentimes younger people would say, "Oh yeah, we never do that. We never do that." The answer really is, in my opinion, when it comes to like the Americanized situation, we don't like quote unquote we don't do that anymore with frequency, because if you look back in like 1970s, like 1980s Americana, which I'm not privy to because my parents are immigrants, but I still watch like 70s, like 60s to 80s portrayal. They do announce even when coming home. The like, honey, I'm home. Welcome home, dear. Right? Hey, we're here. That stuff does actually do occur before. Like the invitation, like come on right in, like the host having the dialogue that deals with reciprocation using English, that has been a decorum. And it still is, but far less frequent. And that transition between me and my parents, what we do in Chinese, we do that all the time. So in Chinese, you do announce yourself and wait to be invited in and all of that stuff. So like when we were going over topics or like okaeri nasai, and also restaurants, but like irashaimase, ching, ching, right? Ching, as in like come in, like, or kochi. It's probably closer to like kochi or chi situation, where like come in, like in this direction, let's go, or invitation. They're just basically just saying invitation. Come in, like you're invited, please come in. So, and it's actually, that's far more colloquial, just saying ching and then like wave the person, but usually there's a larger phrase to be used. I don't know if that's held anymore, how formal it is, but generally speaking, still happens. And in the United States, at least certain places, you still walk to a waiting area, and that's probably why that there's a big disconnect. You still walk in the area, but you're not in the restaurant yet. You're walking, waiting to be waited on. So you still go through like the ropes of how do you say hi and stuff. But that decorum has, yeah, it does have varying fadedness now. Like fine dining is not a thing. Like it's coming back, honestly. Gen Z kids, at least in the United States, there's a resurgence for fine dining, and not necessarily fine dining in the sense of the European word, where it's expensive things and like classy, high scale place. It's more like a dining in general, like dining together with friends and stuff. So that decorum might be coming back, where you have to understand how to greet the host or the service, and then back and forth throughout your meal, and then the other way happens too. So now people are expected to do that. So it's kind of interesting how things go through cycles, because at the tail end, like 5 years ago, when internet is at its height and COVID is happening, the big C, the little C, right, is happening, that type of thing really went to an all-time low, where people don't greet each other anymore, and pleasantries is a waste of time. It still lingers now. Most people, like when they talk about stuff, it's like, man, pleasantries is such a waste of time. There's no reason to use pleasantries. Just go straight to the business, right? And then when I think about it, I'm like, how often do you go to the business? Do you like come with a prepared essay like I do, or do you mean like you hope that when you don't participate in pleasantries, someone else provide the business for you? Because pleasantries is that polite speech. So I don't really know. It's not a cake and eat it situation. You can't be not cognizant and practice polite speech in public areas and still feel like you're good at it or be good at it or people think you're good at it when you don't do it. And then when you think it's a waste of time, then it's probably not going to be memorable. So then when you walk into a restaurant for the first time in Japanese, you're like, wait, what is it that I say? And then meanwhile, you walk into, at least in my opinion, that same person may walk into an American restaurant and they say nothing. They just stand there. The waiter just gives you, does what they want, try to shoot up oh, how is everyone today and whatnot. It's like, good. I'll have this, please. I honestly, sometimes there's no kudasai or sumimasen. It's more like, I'll have this. It just hangs and I'm like, and you know what? That doesn't mean that the waiter or the service don't accept that as a social norm. Like you're gonna have a hit or miss. Sometimes it's expected, so the waiter is like, doesn't really matter. They might even think it's nice. The person is just, oh, I don't have to talk to the person, right? So that's what I mean. Like decorums and stuff have shifted back and forth oftentimes. Like when you could end up talking to a waiter who doesn't want to talk to you. How do I know that's true? I've done that before. Where when a waiter says like, oh, how's everyone's day? And I'm like, my day is pretty well. How's your day? It seems like it's kind of busy around here. And then the waiter is like, is everyone ready to order? I'm like, wait, I thought we were gonna have a that type of thing does happen though. And my first thought is I generally consistently take the risk. So if someone's asking how's my day, I want to know how their day is. And then I want to also contextualize their situation, because I much rather shoot for the hills than I default to politeness far more, the pleasantry and politeness far more than projecting my own personal opinions and whatnot. Like that stuff is, or like prioritize your efficiency over like a human interaction, largely because I want to be seen as reciprocating. So if the person ends up ignoring me, I reciprocate it. So it's not on me to be the person who could potentially look bad, which is what I mean by tatemae and honne. Like honne helps me, like if I ask the waiter how their day is and they brush me off, that's fine. I'm not emotionally invested, right? I'm separated in emotion. I was trying to be polite. I make sure that I'm always polite. Some part of my American upbringing would make me slightly disappointed or slightly kind of concerned. However, Chinese and like my understanding of Japanese culture vicariously makes me like, they're really busy. That's fine. As long as I act polite, it can't blow back on me. So that is the very neutral, neutered way of demonstrating, like, do you get offended if you ask someone how's their day and you took the effort to do so and then they brush you off? Well, it really doesn't matter what they do, more so than what you try to do and make sure you maintain it in public space. You are being polite the at any expense in which you yourself may not necessarily be emotionally invested. It's both for your protection and also potential consequences. So when you have this somewhat detachment of your personal emotions from the decorum of acting polite, it's a safeguard as well as it is a potential appearance thing. So typically when someone says like I'm hot garbage and I'm the worst person alive, I would politely say, while I may not necessarily agree or disagree with you, if you feel like talking about why you think I'm hot garbage, I'm more than welcome to listen. Otherwise, I imagine it would be a lot healthier or mentally more agreeable to you to find someone who you might like and not be hot garbage. And I'm being polite, right? I'm being polite. Now, some part of me, I'm cold garbage. Like some part of me might be a little hurt, right? Like, but I'm not gonna show that. That is Japanese. That's what I mean by when I read and see the concept of honne, right? Honne, honne and tatemae. Like it's also part of Chinese 面子, and was around friends who were upset for me because of like treatments like that. Like they wouldn't stand for it, and that is a cultural thing that I navigate because I do have friends who are of that variety, so they would talk back, right? They would, and that is their social norm. So I again, then the default is that I would respect what their course of actions are by understanding their social norm, and I would act accordingly polite to them while trying to negotiate and de-escalate the problem that's happening. Whether I feel like it's exhausting or not, I practice it a lot, so inherently I'm indifferent and I'm usually neutral in these situations. The idea is you act polite and you de-escalate at all times. So cue the guy that is the stoic person, right? Like if someone accidentally spilled coffee on me, I would find the most polite way to save the face of the server who's doing their best despite accidents happen, right? And I would then elevate my position by being polite. And that's kind of how that works. That specific example has happened multiple times. Or being served the wrong dish, right? And how would you go about it? Like someone getting your order wrong, for example. I've seen, at least growing up in the United States, seen quite a variety of interactions from various cultural backgrounds on how to handle when someone gets your order wrong, for example. And for myself, actually, hear me out. I'm genuinely curious if how often do Japanese people simply eat it and then leave? Because my best friends and I, a lot of times, like even if the order is wrong, we just eat it and then we leave. Like so anti like conflict that there's this whole line of rationale in which like, oh, maybe I'll like something that I wasn't expecting to order. That type of thing happens too, all for the sake of not being confrontational. It's truly one of the things that I can relate so wholeheartedly to Japanese and not having to be in Japan. Like, and my friends they're rare people too, in my opinion. They're anomalies, and that's where so much restraint comes from that. There is this one time where literally a bug was found in the food, and we all rationalize the most reasonable thing is to not complain about it. Literally, that's how tolerant my closest friends and I are. Like, and for the record, if you're wondering, were we at a fine dining restaurant? No, we were at Burger King. But we were at Burger King in a different country as well. So, I don't know. I'm not saying this that everyone should be like this. Obviously, it's a balancing act, and your cultural backgrounds will tell you what type of social norm you are. Like for my cultural norm background, many people would see me as a pushover, like someone who's soft, right? And I talk about this quite often. Burger being, I shared many of these situations, and the social norm in the country or the environment of the United States that I grow up with, they would see that as a form of weakness. Right? Like you're weak because you avoid conflict. You're weak because you're soft and people can take advantage of that and do whatever. And my first thought is like, the last time I checked, being stoic and constantly being able to tolerate things doesn't make one weak. They make it strong. They make themselves strong. The one that constantly lose their cool and throw a fit the first moment that their idealisms are violated, that's not a show of strength to me. That's certainly a demonstration of some sort of strength, not the particular strength that I'm talking about. Now, hear me out. Learning how to be polite can also get you to resolve those problems without escalating the problem. So I didn't choose to do that. It's not like these compilation videos don't understand kindness for weakness. Play epic music. Yeah, don't misunderstand kindness for weakness. I am incredibly tolerant. Like that's what I feel is the thing that connects me to the Japanese culture without being Japanese. But I don't really have to because the Chinese culture requires that too. You are incredibly tolerant. And Beth mentioned this like 2 days ago about like the appearance of being polite and being agreeable. That requires far more strength than someone who can easily brush off that as softness. Like, I'm not conceding to the idea that they didn't do anything wrong. I'm choosing to not make a fuss about it because I don't need it. Now, when I do think I want something, I would be as kind and like as tolerant and understandable as possible to get things that I want by politeness. And that usually works out very wonderfully to my advantage. So, if you want to see it as weakness for that instance of tolerating people's mistakes, you have to stay for how it's resolved. Because generally speaking, the resolutions are far more consistent when you don't lose your cool, when your fragile, ideal world falls apart immediately because someone made an error. So that happens. Like, people have gotten my order wrong a lot. It happens still, right? Like, if you order 1,000 plates, come on, there's got to be a chance eventually. Can't lose your marbles because of that. Things were spilled on me many times, and actually most of those times I helped the person clean up. Someone tripped and dropped something, I would ask if they need help. I wouldn't like do the super thing where like immediately assume they need help. So that's also politeness too, right? Like someone, like the thing was dropped, like, hey, do you want any help with that? Right? Or like they spilled something on me. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. I can take care of it. In the like later down the road. Close, no damage done, no harm done. Is it all right if I like have another drink? the drink that is no here. I would make some sort of like humor comment. Like, I suppose I would need another drink now, even though like the drink is on me. That situation. So, diffusing things is, to me, far more a show of strength than someone who executes strength, like show them who's boss situation. Again, different cultural perceptions. For myself, I favor the strength of tolerance and discipline versus the literal strength of getting what you want. That is often a very close topic for me when it comes to, like, if you're apologizing, are you showing weakness? That is a pretty hot topic if we were thinking about two clashing cultures. Like, if you're incredibly apologetic, right? Like, you know, in certain areas of environment, being increasingly apologetic can be seen as a sign of weakness, versus increasingly apologetic because you can humble yourself without damage to yourself. Like, you can lower yourself, you can humble yourself at any time because you're not that weak, right? You're not weak in the sense of that. So, pros and cons, so to speak, different perspectives. All right. With that said, that's the end for our Bunpro session today. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. As always, feel free to follow along if you want to pick up Bunpro for yourself. Give it a go. You can always read the topic. You're always welcome to come on by, yap, contradict, counterpoint me, right? Be expressive, I suppose. I'm a bit of a mixed bag here. Anyway, so until next time, 皆さんまたね。見てくれてありがとう. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna get up, walk around, stretch a bit, and I'll be back for Hansi here. Thank you.